Welcome to the video for skill number 63. I can use composite area to estimate the area of an irregular shape. In this skill we're going to be calculating the area of what I call blobs. Here I am holding a blob. Well, actually this is a blobfish, and we want to calculate the area of blobs, so we will just put the blobfish away. A blob is some wonky, willy-nilly, strange shape that we want to calculate the area of. And we don't have any area formulas for a shape such as this. But what we can do is we can put the blob inside of a box, and then we know the blob is less than the area of the box. If we wanted to, we could actually even break the box down into a grid and calculate the area that way. So we have about half of a box here, we have maybe half of a box here, maybe 1/3 or a quarter of a box here, a quarter of a box here, and we count it up that way. This is demonstrated on the first page of our notes for skill 63, and we'll title it Area Estimation. As you see, example 1, we are approximating the area of the blob. And what I've done is I've broken it down on a grid, and we are finding the area of each space that it occupies. So in this triangle, or this grid, we've got about half of a square, and the next one we have almost a full square. In the third one we have probably about half a square as well. And we just go through and we count up those spaces for all of the spots. So we've got another 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus about a half. On this line we have 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. And we do that for the whole blob, and we get a collection of numbers that we can add up. And if we add all those numbers up, we get roughly 24 square units. Now, of course, this value isn't exact, it's just an approximation. It would take far more advanced mathematics to get a more accurate answer. Another way we could get a more accurate answer is if we were to create an even more fine grid than currently exists. I could break each of those squares in half, and then we have a more complete, smaller grid. It gets pretty messy. So this skill is really about approximation, and you'll find it's a pretty easy one to do. On to our next blob. Blobfish not happy. Sad blobfish. Example 2. Find the area of the blob. Sometimes it's easier to break it down into smaller shapes. So as you can see with this blob, we could go about counting all the squares up, but that might take a while because it occupies a lot of squares. So instead what we do is we break our blob down into, we've got some sort of trapezoid shape here, and then we've got a rectangular shape right here, and then another rectangle down here, and then finally we have some sort of triangle-ish shape there. And so this particular blob we could break down by finding the areas of each of the 4 pieces. So the area of the trapezoid is going to be half of base 1 plus base 2 times the height. So it's 9 across, height of 3, our second base is 4. So we get the area of the trapezoid. Likewise, we find the area of the rectangle, we find the area of the triangle, half base of 2 times a height of 4, and then an area of the last rectangle, which is 3 by 2. So that allows us to find 4 areas that we add together. And this is a much more efficient way than drawing or counting up squares. Perhaps when I do this on the skill test, what I'll have is I'll have a blob that's on a grid that has too many squares to count. And it would be really annoying to count all of those squares up. It would take a very, very long time. So instead what you would do is you would say, oh, well, we have approximately a rectangle here, and we have a trapezoid here, and we have a triangle here, and another trapezoid here, and maybe a smaller rectangle there. So you could break it down that way. Alright, for skill number 63, it basically comes down to calculating the area of a blob. So a blob will be drawn in some odd little shape, and then I will provide you a grid that the blob sits on, and you use that grid to calculate the area of the blob.